Olympic athletes are put under a lot of pressure, from the extensive hours of training and coach lectures to the immense physical and emotional strain. These athletes undergo a lot to be the best of the best. But would the pressure and stress of being an Olympic athlete be enough to make Oscar Pistorius kill his girlfriend? Oscar Pistorius was a South African sprinter who overcame even more challenges than most. At 11 months old, both of his legs were amputated below the knee. Since he was a kid, Oscar was super into sports, which he was able to participate in thanks to the modern technology of prosthetics. He first showed interest in rugby, but after sustaining a knee injury from a rugby match at age 16, Oscar had to find a new sport that would allow him to recover. That's when he decided to start running track. And what a life-changing decision that was. It was quickly revealed that Oscar was one hell of a runner. He got these racing blades, which are a form of prosthetics specifically for running, and quickly earned the nickname Blade Runner. Oscar raced in the Paralympics, and in 2012, he went on to compete in the Olympics as the first amputee to participate in Olympic track events and the first double amputee to ever compete in the Games, period. But just 1 year later, Oscar's career would go down the toilet. And it wasn't because of an injury. It's because he was arrested for killing his girlfriend. Super early in the morning on Valentine's Day of 2013, Oscar was at his home in Pretoria, South Africa with his 29-year-old girlfriend, Riva Steenkamp. Riva was a beautiful blonde South African model and reality TV star who had beauty and brains because she also worked as a paralegal. Now, most couples on Valentine's Day celebrate their love with chocolate-covered strawberries and roses, but Oscar, he opted for a firearm. Yeah, we're not exactly sure the details of what led to this, but we'll analyze it all a little later. So Riva was in the toilet cubicle with the door locked, and Oscar was on the other side of the toilet door. He lifted up the pistol, pointed the barrel at the door, and fired 4 times. 3 of those bullets hit Riva. One passed through her fingers and hit her arm, another hit her directly above her right ear, and the third went straight into her hip. Oscar started panicking, but couldn't even get into the toilet cubicle to see the damage, so that's when he grabbed a cricket bat and broke the toilet door down. Minutes later, Oscar called the manager of his gated community, asking him to get an ambulance. Crazy thought. Why couldn't Oscar call for an ambulance? The fact that he went out of his way to call the manager at 3 a.m. to ask him to call for an ambulance just does not make sense to me. Anyway, the manager called for first responders while Oscar tended to Riva. He picked up her body from the bathroom floor and carried her downstairs. He then set her down at the base of the staircase and apparently started giving her mouth to mouth. I'm so confused. Isn't he the one who just fired at her? At some point during that time, Oscar's neighbor, Johan, arrived. He just so happened to be a doctor, so he tried to open Riva's airway by doing this jaw lift maneuver thingy. And from what I could tell, there was someone else who'd arrived at the house, and they tried tying a tourniquet around Riva's arm wound. At first, Riva was making these gurgling sounds and appeared to be breathing, but Johan knew that given Riva's head wounds, it was too late. Shortly after that, she stopped breathing. Johan did all the basic things like check Riva's pulse, pupils, and breathing patterns and determined she was gone. Sometime around 4 a.m., South African detective Hilton Botha got a phone call from his colonel saying Oscar shot his girlfriend. Hilton jumped out of bed, got dressed, and headed for Oscar's house as quickly as possible. When he got there and opened the door, he saw Riva at the base of the stairs and knew this was about to be a roller coaster of a case. Hilton walked up the staircase to Oscar's bedroom to check out the scene where it all went down. And just to paint the full picture for you, it was a fancy marble staircase, and the whole house was so freaking huge and nice. Oscar was doing well for himself. Anyway, Hilton walked into the master bedroom and made his way to the bathroom door, which was covered in bullets. On the bathroom floor, there was a red-stained cricket bat, 2 cell phones, and a 9mm parabellum pistol. By the look of things, Detective Hilton knew exactly what had happened, or he at least had a very strong hunch. The only people that appeared to be in the house at the time of the crime were Oscar and Riva. There were no signs of forced entry. other than the open window in the bathroom, but it didn't seem like a feasible option. And it didn't look like a situation where Oscar may have been startled by a Riva surprise entrance, because based on the security log, she'd been over at Oscar's for like 3 days. Detective Hilton was so certain Oscar was responsible, he told his colonel to arrest Oscar because by then he'd already been read his rights. And it does sound a little hard that Hilton had already come to this conclusion so early on, but he was very familiar with Oscar, and not just because of his running ability. In 2009, Oscar was hosting a party at his house and ended up in a fight with his at-the-time girlfriend, Melissa. Well, the argument between Oscar and Melissa got so heated that they decided to kick everyone out. An attendee named Cassidy was going through one of the doors as Oscar was trying to close it, and he got so angry that he slammed it on her super hard. After that, Oscar just started punching this door like crazy, which caused a panel to fall on Cassidy's leg. 6 weeks earlier, Cassidy had just gotten a cast taken off of that leg after getting reconstructive surgery on her ankle. So that panel did some major damage to her leg. Cassidy went up to Oscar sometime after that to tell him he hurt her, and he replied, "Well, call your lawyer." Here's something super interesting though. Detective Hilton was the one who actually arrested Oscar, which is why I think he was so confident in his theory, aside from all the other evidence at the crime scene that screamed Oscar did it. So back to Riva's case in 2013. Detective Hilton walked into the garage where Oscar was sitting on a gym bench wearing clothes that were soaked in his girlfriend's DNA. He had his head in his surprisingly clean hands and was sobbing. Detective Hilton asked, "Did you wash your hands?" Oscar said yes, because they were full of blood. Hilton then asked Oscar if he remembered him from their encounter a few years prior. He said yes. Now here's the question we've all been waiting for. What the heck happened? Oscar replied, "I thought it was a burglar." You thought your girlfriend sitting on the toilet was a burglar? If you're gonna lie, at least make it a believable one. Well, Oscar stuck with the story, and he went on to embellish the tale by claiming he had perception deprivation from loud fans and the dark room. He heard the bathroom door screech open and swore Riva was still in his bed, so he was like, it has to be an intruder. Here's my thing though. What intruder would break in through a tiny bathroom window and just hang out in the locked toilet stall? So after Riva's body was examined, it was determined that she couldn't have been sitting on the toilet because all of the bullets hit her on the right side. So she must have been crouching behind the locked toilet door, which makes me think she was hiding in the bathroom because she was scared of Oscar. And based on the way the casings were found in the bathroom, detectives concluded Oscar was aiming from less than 5 feet away from the door, giving me even more reason to believe this theory is faulty. You'd think he'd be able to discern a burglar from his girlfriend, even if it was behind a toilet door. Here's another red flag. The trajectory of the bullets seemed to have been angled down, meaning Oscar must have been wearing his prosthetic legs. But in his interviews, Oscar claimed he wasn't on his prosthetics. Well, Oscar was officially taken into custody and charged with slaughtering Riva on February 15th, a day after the crime. He had his bail hearing just a few days later, and that's when Detective Hilton, Prosecutor Nell, and a few others testified against Oscar, saying he put on his prosthetic legs, walked to the bathroom, and purposefully fired at Riva through the toilet door. Nell claimed it had to be premeditated based on the amount of time it all took. Detective Hilton said Oscar was dangerous and should remain in custody before his trial because he had a house in Italy and offshore bank accounts. Oscar's lawyer was all like, Oscar doesn't have a house in Italy, and even if he did try to run away, someone would notice him in his prosthetics. The judge determined Oscar wasn't a flight risk, so he released him on bail, which was like $115,000 US. But something insane happened during the 4 days of the bail hearing. Detective Hilton presented contradictory evidence and confessed to making all of these mistakes at the crime scene. And then on the 22nd, right before the final day of the bail hearing, it was discovered that Detective Hilton was facing charges of attempted manslaughter. Yeah, so in 2011, Detective Hilton and 2 other police officers allegedly fired at a taxi with 7 people inside. So this case against Detective Hilton had been dropped, but a little over a week before Reva's incident, it was reinstated. Once that connection was made, Detective Hilton was removed from the case and someone else was reassigned as lead detective. The trial began that March, and here was Oscar's full story. He said at like 10 o'clock that night, Riva was doing yoga in the bedroom while he was watching TV in bed. They both fell asleep, but in the middle of the night, Oscar woke up to bring a fan in from the balcony and close the doors, blinds, and curtains. While he was up, he heard a noise coming from the bathroom and thought it was someone trying to break in. He said he whispered to Riva to call the police and grabbed his pistol from under his bed without even putting his prosthetics on. Now, Oscar said he was too scared to turn on the lights, which is why he didn't think that Riva wasn't in bed. He said he went into the bathroom and noticed the window wasn't closed and the door to the toilet was locked. That's when he said, and I quote, "It filled me with horror and fear of an intruder or intruders being inside the toilet. I thought he or they must have entered through the unprotected window. As I did not have my prosthetic legs on and felt extremely vulnerable, I knew I had to protect Riva and myself. I believed that when the intruders came out of the toilet, we would be in grave danger. I felt trapped as my bedroom door was locked and I have limited mobility on my stumps." So he fired 4 times at the door while yelling at Riva to call the police. But when he didn't hear Riva, he got nervous. Oscar made his way back to the bedroom and was still too scared to turn the lights on, so he felt around in the bed and realized she wasn't there. Then he thought, wait, was that Riva in the toilet room? And, well, you know the rest. Now, I'm on the fence with this because I don't think it makes sense for someone to bust in through the bathroom door and hide in the toilet, but when I learned Oscar came from a household where firearms were collected, it made me stop and think. Oscar's dad and brothers reportedly own a total of 55 firearms, which is just way too much. They say it's for hunting and protection, but like 55? So that makes me think that Oscar may have been exposed to the whole "I heard a noise, grab a loaded weapon" thing at a young age. And I'm not trying to say what he did wasn't bad, but I'm just trying to understand the logic of it. People make rash decisions sometimes, and for someone like Oscar who's exposed to the mindset of always resorting to grabbing a pistol, you can see how things escalated so quickly. But then that brings us to the argument of whether or not this was premeditated and Oscar knew it was Riva. Oscar and Riva had only been dating for 3 months, and Riva was the reason he broke up with his previous girlfriend, Samantha. So things are already sticky. While Oscar was known for being violent towards women. Exhibit A, his arrest in 2009. On top of that, a few other exes of Oscar's said he would harm and threaten them. Samantha said Oscar used to beat her and lock her in his house with no food. He was super aggressive towards her, and she was so scared at one point she hid his pistol from him. Well, it seemed like Oscar was the same with Riva. And based on messages between the two, Riva was afraid of Oscar and may have wanted to break up. She texted him saying, "I'm scared of you sometimes and how you snap at me and of how you will react to me." Another text, she talked about being attacked and told Oscar, "You're the one person I deserve protection from." This is all making me suspect Oscar felt Riva was going to end things, so he resorted to violence and intentionally fired at her. It's really sad that Riva tried calling him out for his aggressive behavior and was just met with even more violence. That's the thing about cases like these. There's no easy way out. Yeah, we can see the signs as an outsider, and it seems like Riva did too, but it's more complicated than just break up with him and leave. You never know what that person is capable of, especially if you've only been dating for 3 months and you're already experiencing extreme spouts of anger. Oscar had a lot of money and could do a lot of things to torment Riva or any of his other past girlfriends. And after hearing that stuff from Samantha, it makes me wonder if Riva was being locked in the house in the days leading up to her demise. Okay, so I can speculate on this all day, but when all is said and done, we'll never fully know because Riva will sadly never be able to tell her side of the story. So here's what ended up happening in court. First of all, the defense tried to say Oscar had generalized anxiety disorder, which influenced his decisions that day. That caused a delay in the trial because Oscar had to get a full mental health exam where psychologists determined he didn't have any form of an anxiety disorder. In September of 2014, the judge found Oscar not guilty for intentionally killing Riva, but guilty of culpable homicide, which basically means he did it by accident. He was also found guilty of reckless endangerment for firing a bullet in a restaurant a month before Riva's crime, which, crazy, but makes sense. Oscar was sentenced to 5 years in prison, but was released on good behavior after just 10 months. In December of 2015, Oscar's Hami conviction was overturned, and he was found guilty of intentionally executing Riva. He was first sentenced to 6 years in jail, but in 2017, his sentence was doubled to 13 years and 4 months. He will be eligible for parole in 2023. Thanks for watching Killer Bites. I'm Brandi. I'll see you guys next time.